Hello, everyone. Welcome to another NinjaOne webinar. My name is Jeff Hunter. I am the field CTO here at NinjaOne. Brief bit of housekeeping before we kick things off officially. This session is being recorded and it will be sent out to all attendees. It will also be posted on our YouTube channel, so you can find it there, and you can also find other webinars that we've done previously. We've been having a very aggressive webinar schedule so far this year, so a lot of different topics out there if you are interested. We also have a giveaway that will be announced at the end of the webinar. There's nothing you need to do to enter. All you had to do was register for this webinar and show up, and you were automatically entered. Finally, you might have questions as we go through our presentation. Please use the Q&A section, not the chat box for that. Q&A is much easier for us to keep track of, so your question will have a much higher chance of actually getting answered if you use the Q&A functionality. With that, housekeeping over. Let's go ahead and officially get started. Welcome to our webinar on streamlining security with NinjaOne and Crowdstrike. Today, I am joined by a colleague from Crowdstrike. Cameron, please introduce yourself.
Hey, thanks for that. Name's Cameron Buriani, solution architect over at Crowdstrike. Been here about 6 years, and I'm here to pretty much show you the integration with the Ninja and the Crowdstrike side and make sure everyone's comfortable with what we can do to keep you secure.
Thank you, Cameron. A little later, Cameron is going to give us a tour of Crowdstrike, and I will also give a demonstration of what the integration looks like inside of NinjaOne. For now, we're pleased to announce the partnership between Crowdstrike and NinjaOne. This integrates the powerful security suite of products from Crowdstrike with the industry-leading unified endpoint management of NinjaOne. And with this integration, you get the ability to automatically deploy Crowdstrike, the ability to alert on detected threats and create tickets from that, and of course, the ability to quickly remediate those threats from inside the NinjaOne portal into Crowdstrike. Now, the industry today, as ever, it is sort of an evergreen comment, faces a litany of challenges. Endpoint environments have never been as complex as they are now, with distributed workforces and a practically unlimited number of threats out in the world. Quite simply, there's more work than ever to get done, and there's less time than ever to actually get that work completed. We have disparate tool sets, remote endpoints, potentially all over the country or all over the globe, scaling issues, and more, all serving as speed bumps in terms of delivering an effective IT management operation. They all contribute to fragmentation. A fragmented environment can make it easy to miss the most important details, especially with manual processes. And of course, too many manual processes ultimately impacts your ability to plan and grow and ultimately improve your total operation. Now, thankfully, NinjaOne is here to help. We make the most difficult aspects of IT easy. Partners who switch to NinjaOne are generally able to consolidate tools, so having fewer tools in their tech stack. They're able to spend less time on recurring and manual processes, and they're able to reduce the amount of time spent on tickets, especially those that are tied to repetitive tasks. And you'll see, I think, that this comes from NinjaOne being able to positively impact so many different aspects of the IT workflow. Patch management is a big one. It's a very consistent refrain that I've heard speaking to people in my time here at Ninja, and I can say it's something I've personally dedicated a lot of time to in the past. I would certainly vote for saying too much time in the past. And it's something we see called out as a demonstrable improvement when people start using NinjaOne. And having that patch management in the same portal as a one-click software deployment option and being backed by robust monitoring, alerting, and automation capabilities, this means scaling to manage many devices is much easier, and especially considering the fact that many devices might live inside the Ninja portal. We're obviously focused on endpoints right now, Windows, Mac, and Linux devices, but there's also mobile devices, virtual machines, critical network infrastructure devices that you may want to monitor from inside the NinjaOne portal. And we've highlighted here in red the topic of today's call, which is our AV/EDR integrations, which ensures that an integrated security product like Crowdstrike Falcon is deployed and providing real-time alerting and monitoring as issues occur and as threats are detected. We'll get here to the demo portion in a little bit, but I think that will underline our case. But having that kind of visibility in a single pane of glass where patches and software applications are being deployed, where you can initiate remote access sessions, where backups and ticketing can also be managed in one consolidated view, I think there's a strong value there in having that visibility, especially in a tool that you use every day. Something like NinjaOne is used all the time in day-to-day operations. And that means that you get that visibility simply by logging into the portal for initiating that remote access. You might also see that you have a threat that has been detected by the CrowdStrike integration. So I think that there's a value there to have that in a consolidated view. You alleviate, minimize the possibility of I missed it, or someone hasn't logged into that portal recently. The data is plainly visible from within the portal. And you should not take my word for it. You should take the word from the people who are using NinjaOne every day, in their day-to-day operations. We did a case study of a mid-market financial institution, and I think these numbers showcase the speed and the efficiency that the CrowdStrike integration in Ninja brings to an actual real-life day-to-day help desk operation. We actually have some quotes from Nick Linnaeus, VP of IT for Great Plains Bank, who is giving some insight into what the switch has provided them when combined with the CrowdStrike integration. You can see the raw numbers here, a 10-minute deployment of CrowdStrike to all the endpoints. You'll see how easy that is within NinjaOne's policy setup. It is a drop-down option, so very easy to get that pushed out. 99.98 first pass patch success rate, so doing very well on the patching front there. 100% visibility from both the IT side, operational perspective, and the security side through that CrowdStrike integration, and of course, overall time being saved. Now, this is Nick's words here, so I'm repeating him, but the CrowdStrike integration is seamless. We get all our CrowdStrike alerts directly in the NinjaOne dashboard. Our entire team can see it, and we no longer rely on a single key holder to monitor that particular tool. For a team of 6, managing over 500 endpoints and 400 employees is much easier. And without question, having CrowdStrike seamlessly integrated with NinjaOne is a major value driver. Having that single pane of glass, centralized alerting, centralized real-time visibility, we can now see every single endpoint beginning to end. And I'll pause here to editorialize a bit on this next one, because I think it emphasizes something that's really important, which is that security is going to take many forms. Obviously, today our focus is CrowdStrike, and the value, I'll say it's almost a requirement these days to have an EDR tool in your stack, and especially when coupled with the integration into NinjaOne. But I'm generally of the mind that as many layers of security that can be added without negatively impacting the overall productivity too adversely, that creates an environment that is most difficult to compromise and is also a less enticing target to potentially malicious attackers. And so we'll talk towards the end of the call about what else you can do beyond just EDR to maintain a strong security posture. But I think this emphasizes a key point here. And again, reading it from Nick, a lapse in patching is a critical security threat to any organization. NinjaOne automatically patches all of our endpoints regardless of location or operating system, enhancing our security. As a financial institution, some regulations require us to provide proof of our patching program to auditors. Thanks to NinjaOne, I can produce a report for auditors that shows 99.98% of patches have been installed, that of 112,000 patches, only 3 have failed, and that we already have a team member working to fix those. Auditors are impressed. We have received some of the highest patching scores in our industry. So I think, end quote there, back to my own words, I think you can see there that there's value beyond just the EDR front. Really, security is something that should be approached holistically. And I think this is a nice quote to end it on before we dive into the demo. Security and IT have always been intertwined. Thanks to NinjaOne, there's finally a platform to manage both simultaneously. And so we'll go ahead and actually dive into a quick demonstration of the CrowdStrike integration, showing off the Ninja dashboard to give you an idea of what this experience would actually be like. One moment to reshare my screen here. All right. That looks like I am sharing the correct screen. So right here, you can see the main system dashboard, and this is where we're getting all of our visibility. You'll see that there's some interesting things here that we'll talk about in a little bit regarding the CrowdStrike integration and that visibility you get as soon as you dive into the portal. But let's first start with actually setting everything up. We'll go to the top right here where you'll see the NinjaOne apps icon, just 4 squares. And if we click on that, we'll see NinjaOne apps. And at the bottom, we can go ahead and view every single app that we have the ability to integrate. And this is where our integrations would live. I'll note here that this is where the integrations that are created by Ninja live. But of course, there are many services out there that utilize our API to create their own integrations. So looking just at this page doesn't really give a full idea of all the integrations that Ninja is capable of. However, you will see CrowdStrike here, and so this is a great this is where we would actually go ahead and get the integration set up. Of course, I already have this enabled, so I'm not going to disable it. If you're adding this for the first time, we would just go ahead and enable. And if you have any questions on this, you'll notice that we have a question mark here, and this links you to the NinjaOne Dojo. The dojo is our Zendesk portal. It's where you can submit help desk tickets, but it's also where we store all of our knowledge base and our video library. And so clicking on this will take me into a second tab here. You can see here a walkthrough of exactly what I need to do to get that CrowdStrike integration set up. But again, in this particular case, I've already done that. So now that we have this set up, we have the integration set up, there's an additional step that we do have to take to ensure that we are looking to deploy CrowdStrike to our devices and that we're going to have that real-time monitoring and alerting. And that is going to be inside of our policies. I'll pause here briefly to sort of discuss policies for anybody who's not familiar with that concept, but they are the engine that make NinjaOne go. They're the lifeblood of the regular day-to-day operation. Most of the settings that you care about from day to day are going to be contained inside of a policy. And so let's go ahead and take a look at one of those. And I think you'll see why that policy is so massively important within Ninja. Let's go ahead and look at, let's say, a CrowdStrike policy right here. And now over on the left-hand side, you'll see this menu here. And I think looking at these settings, you're starting to see why policies are so important. Right here at the top, we have our conditions. This is what we would monitor and alert on. We do have the ability to respond to any of these alerts with a script. So we could do some self-remediation here. A service goes down. We might want to then automatically try starting that service. And the third critical key step here is, did it work? Did the script that we executed actually take the intended action of starting the service back up? And the when no longer met checkbox that I'm highlighting right here, this is that active look at the root cause of the condition so that we're resetting the alert, clearing that noise off your dashboard so that you don't have to worry about anything. Now, other policy settings here would be scheduled automations. We can run automations across any device that is assigned to this policy here. We have our Windows patching, although, of course, for Mac policy or a Linux policy, you would see the respective patching for those operating systems. This is just a Windows policy. You'll also see for our third-party software application, a very similar methodology to our Windows patching. And if you're using NinjaOne Backup, this is where you would create either your file and folder or your image plan to ensure that your devices are being backed up the way that you'd like. But again, those are other aspects of policies, not the main topic of conversation today. Our conversation today is on CrowdStrike, and you can see the deployment here is very simple. It's a drop-down menu. You'll have the options that you've integrated in the Ninja, which in this case would be CrowdStrike. And then when we select CrowdStrike, it is automatically deployed to all devices that are on this particular policy. Now you'll get a link to the CrowdStrike dashboard here. You'll notice that ours is US-2. That will vary depending on the instance that you're hosted on inside of CrowdStrike. A note here for the installation, if you are switching from a different tool here, we would certainly recommend removing that tool prior to deploying CrowdStrike. You'll see here that if another antivirus is installed, our default action here is going to be to notify you that there's been some sort of issue, but otherwise to take no action so that we don't end up in a situation where two EDR tools are coexisting on the same system. Obviously, that's not something you would want unless you're specifically trying to have that action occur. You could have it proceed with the installation anyway, but again, good practice would be to remove the pre-existing EDR tool before deploying CrowdStrike. However, in the event that maybe there's a straggler around and it did not get successfully removed, you'll see here that we will automatically reattempt to deploy CrowdStrike. Currently, this is happening on an interval of every 2 hours, but this could be at a specific point in time every day as well. So maybe every day at 2 a.m. We want to try and reinstall CrowdStrike. And that way, if we were able to remove the lingering installation previously, then this will go ahead and deploy the CrowdStrike sensor to the device. Now, one other option inside of policies that we haven't talked about is activities. Activities inside of Ninja are logs, essentially. So these actions that we see here for CrowdStrike, these are all going to be listed in the logs of an individual device. And it is something that you could export either through the API or just into a CSV. So what we can do here is essentially create more visibility through alerts, or we could actually create a ticket from any of these actions as they occur. So case in point here, if a quarantine has failed, I might want to raise visibility of this, let everybody know that this has been a problem here. And so this could come from the built-in notifications that I'm showing right here. This is Ninja's built-in notifications that would operate off of email or SMS. We also have the ability to create a ticket here. You can see NinjaOne ticketing. We could alert that an AV threat has been detected, and we'd be able to deal with that right within the NinjaOne portal. However, you may have a service that integrates with Ninja, like ConnectWise Manage or Autotask, and you'll see that we do have the ability to integrate with both of those services to create a ticket, again, for greater visibility. And if you're working with a product that doesn't currently have an integration into Ninja, just some third-party application where you want to direct the alert traffic, you can absolutely do that using the notification channels. This allows you to direct notifications to, like I said, third-party services that might not have an integration within Ninja. In this case, you can see that we have an email option. This could be to multiple emails or just a single one. We also have our Slack integration. This will go into a dedicated Slack channel to see all of your alerts if you are a Slack user. Now, we're not limited to just those two. We also have the ability to direct these alerts to an SMS number. We could also direct this into something like PagerDuty. And perhaps the most flexible of these options would be a webhook. So any service that accepts webhooks, we can go ahead and direct these alerts into that service with all the pertinent information that would be included inside of that webhook. And that's it. There's really not a lot of additional setup that you need to do here, or there's really no additional setup that you would need to do inside of Ninja. Now, what does that get you? Now, first and foremost, it gets you deployment of the Ninja, not the Ninja agent, the CrowdStrike sensor. The Ninja agent is already deployed, but the CrowdStrike sensor would be deployed to the devices that are assigned to that policy where we enabled it. So the deployment is taken care of, and that is either across devices that are already inside of NinjaOne or for devices that will be deployed in the future. So if you're onboarding 100 machines next week, simply by virtue of installing the Ninja agent, if you have assigned a policy to those devices that contains CrowdStrike, that drop-down selection we saw, then this will go ahead and deploy to those devices. So it's good not just for current devices in the system, it's also good for ongoing deployment. It's very easy to get the CrowdStrike sensor deployed to those devices in an entirely automated fashion. And what that gives you inside of Ninja, if we come back to the system dashboard here, is visibility of when we've detected a threat. And so right here, I can see that we have an unhealthy device. This device health tile shows me where all of our major actions are that we really care about. And we'll see in this case that we have an active or blocked threat here. Now, if we go up to here, we'll see this icon. This shows us that in this particular organization that we have one device with an active threat. And if we go to this devices menu, we can go to threats and then active and blocked. And this will actually show us the nature of the threat. We can see the device that this is on, we can see the location, and we can see the vendor. So we can see that CrowdStrike has detected this threat. We know that this is active. And then our next step here is to go into CrowdStrike. And so if I check the box here, you'll see that I get this option to remediate in CrowdStrike, which will take me into the CrowdStrike portal where I can address the issue. And for more on that, I'm going to turn it over to Cameron, and he is going to take us through the CrowdStrike portion of the demonstration today.
Cool. Thanks for that, Jeff. And yeah, we're going to go into the CrowdStrike UI for the demo, and we're going to kind of set the stage first with a couple of slides. That way we make sure we best understand it. But that was a great overview. So Let me go share my screen and we're going to go into it. Perfect. All right. So essentially, what are we trying to do? Building off what Jeff said with that integration, what we want to do is we want to provide full spectrum endpoint protection against modern cybersecurity threats. That's really our goal, right? At the end of the day, what CrowdStrike wants to do is we chose to partner with Ninja because it was the best path by which we can work together in order to help stop breaches. Now, that's a bit of a vague statement, right? Let's dive into what that means. What are the complexities and what are the issues that we're seeing today manifest within the cybersecurity world? And as we start to kind of be promulgating into this new era where generative AI, more advanced threats from a geopolitical standpoint are targeting us, we're starting to see kind of three pillars really manifest by which we want to address. And number one, of course, is the increased cybersecurity risk and threats. Kind of already mentioned it, but for quite obvious reasons, obviously you can start to see with generative AI, you can start to promulgate more sophisticated attacks can then be brought to a lower level. And then we're seeing the macroeconomic and macro political situation escalate. We're seeing complex sprawling environments. So previously you may have had environments by which it was only a couple different type of asset classes. Now we're looking at dynamic asset classes. We're moving towards the cloud. We're looking at the perimeters of that attack surface. So the environments are getting larger, the risks are getting higher. And guess what? On top of that, that's meaning more manual and more time-consuming processes. It's more demands, it's more of an attack surface, and you're having to spend more of your time day to day just to keep your front door secure. So what do we want to do? We need to stay ahead of those modern cybersecurity attacks. And that's why we want to work together with Ninja to harden those endpoints. And what we're going to do is we're going to get you faster detection, increase response, and we just ultimately want to drive a secure environment in a rapid fashion. So that's that strategic partnership. That's why we chose to go to market with Ninja, which is, of course, the market leading endpoint management solution. And then we would obviously say we're the industry leading endpoint protection. And it's that fusion by which allows you to get that agent on seamlessly in real time and then get protection in day one. Jeff already talked about that great use case. I'll touch on it a little bit, but we essentially had a deployment of 500 agents in under 10 minutes. I don't know how big the environment is for a lot of people on this call, but I'm pretty sure 500 is a reasonable count. If you're working with Ninja, we can actually put this on seamlessly in real time with no reboot required. And that's what we're doing here. By doing that, we can actually get full spectrum endpoint protection against those modern threats. It's one single agent, one console, one UI, regardless of the package that you go with. You may go with everything in the kitchen sink, or you may go with the minimally viable package. It's always going to be that single agent. I'll demo that in a second. I'll show you what the core UI looks like and how we can go through an accelerated remediation process. But that's the number one takeaway today. It's a centralized console. We can automate endpoint hardening. We can do things like, hey, let's create fusion workflows, which are SOAR-based capabilities where I actually want to automatically do things like contain a machine, get remediation devices, and start to harden layers of that surface to make it more difficult for adversaries to get in. And of course, it's automated and fast, seamless EDR. We can actually get this in real time. We can have full visibility across your environment. So deploy with Ninja and then be able to answer questions such as, hey, how expansive is a perceived threat in my environment? You can run this in real time with our EDR tool, and you can give definitive results and let your clients know. And unified remediation. As Jeff kind of showed, you have that nice little click through that'll take you right to the CrowdStrike UI. And I'll show you how you contain machines and how you can remote on into them to do full remote remediation on that single agent. And you can do all of this without impeding that end user. So cool. That's what we want to do, is we want to bring this all together to rapidly detect, investigate, and ultimately stop those attacks that are targeting that endpoint. That's what CrowdStrike's seeking to do. We want to take that visibility of that EDR agent. We'd encourage you to go look at third-party visibility testing results and see where we actually map on there. We actually want to take that attack surface and say, hey, we have that complex organization. Let's reduce that. Smaller attack surface means less risk, and that's going to increase better protection and ultimately give you maximum efficacy and drive a faster response. We want to get you out of the UI. We want to reduce risk. And we want you to be able to do that one click that Jeff showed, where you can go on in, remediate it, and get on with your day. Cybersecurity is obviously top of mind, but we shouldn't have to spend all our administrative overhead cycles on just performing basic actions that we need to stop threats. Now, Jeff did talk about the Great Plains Bank. I'm not going to rabbit hole too long on this, but what I do want to talk about is that top option there where it says 10 minutes to deploy to 500 endpoints with an almost 100% first patch success rate. So if you're trying to think about pushing this out, because you're already using Ninja, one of the more difficult portions done, which is the management of those endpoints. Push it out silently without rebooting your end user's machine and with no end user intervention. I'll show you those parameters, but they will be none the wiser that you've deployed CrowdStrike onto those endpoints. So again, it's all about speed of deployment. Our CEO likes to say, a lot of people look at the calendar when they're looking at time. CrowdStrike's looking at the watch. We care about minutes. We care about seconds. Let's get it on that endpoint and let's get that security today. And that's what we mean. Full spectrum endpoint protection with Ninja and CrowdStrike. Ultimately, before we go into the demo, the key takeaway here is it's fast and seamless. You're already using Ninja. You already got the difficult part of managing those endpoints. Let's now deploy. Let's get it done. Let's look at our watch and let's get it done in minutes. Full visibility and control, holistic view across the environment. If you're fully deploying to that cast with that EDR agent, you can now see every single action taken on those machines. And of course, it's not gathering PII because it's metadata only, but you'll be able to holistically answer questions across the environment. And ultimately, is that unified remediation. It's that single click through, load up the CrowdStrike UI, see the detection, and take action on it. And for that, we're going to go into the demo now. So if you give me 1 second, I'm going to pop over to the demo screen. Righty. Perfect. So what you're seeing is the CrowdStrike UI. This is going to be the view or an aggregate of those detections visualized in a single pane of glass. So when you click that little detect through, you're going to land in your CrowdStrike UI portion. In the upper right-hand side is a live feed of the most recent detection. So you can drill in and triage from here. You could say, hey, looks like I blocked a high-level attack. I can see the tactic and technique where it maps to MITRE to know exactly what was blocked. I can see the exact time and the host. So you immediately know what was blocked, when it was blocked, where and why it was blocked. Towards the bottom is a spatial representation of those assaults visualized over a 30-day period. I know I already mentioned it, but one of the most important aspects of CrowdStrike is that we will always be one single lightweight agent with one console, and that installation will never require a reboot. So let's go on into new detections. That's typically what you want to do, right? You want to do easy, seamless remediation. And this goes to your detections page, which is, of course, is a visualization of those detections across your cast. You can do things like parse through by severity, time, tactic, technique. What we want to do here is we want to say, all right, I want to go see all my high and critical breaches in my environment. And maybe I want to go look at a specific machine. I'm going to say, well, you know what? I'd like to look at Mike's machine. So I can go in and I'll say, let's go look at Mike's specific machine. He's got a couple here. So we can hone on in and we can identify Mike's machine accordingly. And when you notice, May 9th, there appeared to be a breach that was associated with an actor called a Pinchy Spider. Well, when I click on in here, I could see every single action associated with that breach, starting with the machine invoking, how an adversary may have gotten into that endpoint, and all actions leading to a ransomware monetization event. And this is all great data on the left and the right-hand side, and I encourage you to dive into it, and we will. But you can always view this info in a spatial fashion where you can pivot to the CrowdStrike process tree. And this process tree is kind of a historiographic representation of that breach, which the earliest manifestation is going to be on the left-hand side, and then the newest on the right. So it's just like reading. And from here, you'll see that spool spatial representation with the machine invoking, going to the desktop, and the piece of malware was detonating from a persistence methodology. Now from here, you're going to say, okay, let's take an action. Perfect. I'd like to contain this machine. Now, when I contain this machine, what this actually does is CrowdStrike is a ring zero or kernel level application. So it actually hooks into the registry and it restricts all communication from this workload to any source except the CrowdStrike cloud. You have the ability to extend the containment rule sets if you'd like to. Maybe there's an IP range that you'd also like it to communicate. But when I contain this machine, guess what? That ejects the adversary out of the environment, but it also prohibits lateral motions. It allows us to lock down this machine and actually essentially perform remediation in an isolated and a safe environment. And that's what we can do next. Maybe we want to go on in and go into the real-time response functionality. So again, in one click, I can contain, or I can choose to connect to the host. And because CrowdStrike is a ring zero app, we can actually remote on into all those machines and we can do full remote remediation. And we can even run PowerShell scripts as an administrator, right? So again, it's that single agent. You have the ability to contain the machine, run real-time response to do the remediation, and ultimately drive a rapid response through one UI and one console. That's the vision behind what we're doing with CrowdStrike, and that's the vision behind that integration with the NinjaOne agent. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I will pass it back over to Jeff.
Thank you very much, Cameron. So I think that's a great view of CrowdStrike. Thank you very much for that. I kind of wanted to switch gears a little bit and stay security focused, but maybe adjacent to an EDR integration specifically, and talk a little bit more about the flexibility, the tool set, and the information that NinjaOne is going to give you to ensure that you have protected devices beyond the protection that CrowdStrike EDR is going to give you. And we'll actually go ahead and start by talking about patching. That was a clear focus, I think, for Great Plains Bank, and I think it's a clear focus for many of the people who we've spoken to over the years who want to move to Ninja. And so the patching tab here, this allows you to manage both third-party software patching as well as operating system patching. You can see here that we have an overview on the operating system patches, and this gives us visibility into the overall status of patching in this particular environment. And so for starters, right here, patching compliance, we can see there's clearly work that needs to be done here. Right here, out of our 28 total patch-enabled devices, only 13 of them are fully patched, meaning that we have, quick math here, 15 devices that are having at least one or more patches that are outstanding. Now, where is the breakdown here? What is, why are these patches not getting installed? Well, the next tile over here shows us where the patches are in the process of being delivered to our devices. So right here, we can see we have 19 patches that are approved. This means we've made a decision on them. They've either been automatically approved by policy settings or they've been manually approved by a human being, but they have not yet been installed yet. If we go down to the pending section, this is patches that have been set to a manual level of approval, and they won't actually get approved and pushed to the device unless a human being actually says, yes, this is what I want to have happen. And so if we click into that, you can see that you get visibility on the KB number, the category of patch. What I think is really important here, especially in a security context, is CVE and CVSS information. And so we can see, in this case, we have the feature update of 22H2 for Windows 10. We can see all the CVEs that are remediated by this particular KB. Now, when we're ready to patch this, we can select all or select individually, and we can either approve or reject. Of course, if you accidentally reject something, we can bring it back to life. If we accidentally approve something, we can go back and say, actually, this is a bad patch released by Microsoft, which I know never happens. And we can go ahead and ensure that that does not actually get installed. And so this is great visibility on your patching. If we go back to the patching dashboard, you'll see that we also show top 10 devices with outstanding patches, whether they're in an approved state or a pending state. And so here, clearly, this RJ3 right here has 7 outstanding patches in some form or fashion. Definitely probably top of mind to go ahead and start getting those patches pushed, find out why that device is not having those patches installed on a regular basis. And so let's actually go in here and then go into this particular policy, the one we were on earlier. And this gives you additional alerting to improve your security and let you know when there's an out-of-band patch that needs to be applied that is above a certain CVSS score. There's a lot we can do from this conditions screen. And this is something that would more directly generate alerts versus us just having the information visible for you inside of the portal. Some of my favorites here, one of one of which would definitely be antivirus health. So on workstations, looking at Windows Security Center and saying, is the antivirus missing? Is it disabled? Is it outdated in some way because it doesn't have definitions? Now, obviously, this is not really necessary given the CrowdStrike integration, but it's a good, let's say, fail-safe in the event that you're managing a distributed workforce or a fragmented workforce that isn't universally using CrowdStrike EDR across the entire fleet. Another one that I really like is patch CVSS score. So if we have an outstanding patch that has been detected for a device and it's above the threshold that we set right here, let's say 9.0, which is our out of the box default, we can then go down to our duration and say if this has been available for more than X number of days, let's say 3 days, we want to go ahead and raise an alert. And so this is giving us additional visibility on patching. So not just relying on the automatic, regular scheduled process, but this would also let us know when we have a high priority, high impact out of band patch that needs to be applied in order to maintain security across the board. And kind of hand in hand with that would just be our patches being installed on a regular basis. Has it been a certain number of days, maybe 15 days, without having an operating system patch installed? Usually, if I've gone certainly more than a month, certainly more than 30 days without a patch being installed, that's cause for concern. I want to look at that. I want to see why a patch isn't being installed. And so again, that just gives you additional visibility, that layer of security, an additional layer of security to make sure that you're aware of when devices are not being patched in the way that you might expect. So this is a really useful in terms of maintaining compliance, but let's shift gears away from patching and let's talk more about device configuration. What can we do to make a device more, difficult to compromise, make it appear, like it's not an easy, an easy safe to crack. We want to go ahead and make the device, make sure that the device has all the security in place that we can possibly give it, so that it is not something that somebody can just walk in the door and easily get access. And a huge avenue for us on this is our template library. These are scripts that are created by NinjaOne engineers on staff here, and they are creating them every day. They're working on them every day to expand this library. And they deal with a lot of common use cases in the IT industry. I'll be honest, one that we use very frequently is this one, blocking a Windows 11 on a Windows 10 device. This blocks at the registry level to ensure that the machine is not getting upgraded to Windows 11 without your say-so. This is, like I said, certainly one that I've recommended perhaps the most in my time here at Ninja. And then we also like this one as well, which is the check for Windows 11 readiness. Is the device ready to be upgraded to Windows 11? And there's other useful options here. I like this one, the display pop-up. It generates a little pop-up box on the end user's machine, and it can say whatever I want it to say. And so I find this useful for notifying people that patching is going to be occurring. I find it useful for essentially bothering the end user, especially with something like low disk space. There's a limit to what I, as a technician, can actually do to free up disk space on a machine. But sending a message to the end user, bothering them every day, saying, hey, you need to delete some stuff to free up disk space on your computer. That is a great option there. However, staying more focused on security, we might want to do something like audit UAC level to see what it's set on the individual machine. We might also want to configure UAC on the device, make sure it's set at the appropriate level. Moving beyond just device configuration, we may also want to recurringly alert when a device is out of compliance. And so in this case, we might use the inactive account alert here. If we have accounts on the device that haven't been logged into within a certain period of time, I think our default on this is 90, but you can make it whatever you'd like, we can raise an alert. And so if we go back into our policies here, we'll actually go into our CrowdStrike policy down here. We can add a new condition. And one that I really like is the script result condition, which allows you to take any script and convert it into an alert. We can run this on a recurring basis, let's say every hour, like so. We don't really have to keep track of inactive accounts that closely every 5 minutes. We can run that inactive account alert. we can configure here using the script variables what length of time we should be looking for. In this case, 90+ days of a user not logging in. And we will ignore disabled users. If they're disabled, then they really can't cause too much issue for us. And so we'll ignore the disabled users. And then we can go ahead and look for the result code. So we can say if the result code is equal to 1, that would indicate that there is an inactive account that has been detected. We can disregard any text string output here. And then if there's a problem with the actual underlying mechanics of the script, which in this case would be, I think, net.exe and get local user to retrieve user information, we can then go ahead and raise an alert. And so in this case, if the exit code is equal to 2, that indicates not that there has been an inactive account detected, but that there's a problem with the underlying mechanics of the script that we should look at and address in order to maintain this sort of visibility long term. Now, of course, you could also run a script in response to that, and that might be to automatically disable a user. I think this just shows you the power that we have. I have really just scratching the surface of what is possible inside of the template library, but there are a lot of device configuration actions there, especially relating around security, that are ultimately going to make your overall security posture much stronger. Going back into that template library, a lot of legacy tools, for example, weak TLS, you may want to disable this. Something like PowerShell 2.0, we might also want to disable. In fact, just disabling stuff alone has a lot of different functionality here. Disabling a fast startup or fast boot, disabling local admin tools, disabling a particular user that we're specifying, something like SMBv1, which at this point is certainly something you'd want to remediate in most cases. But I always like to remind people that, of course, endpoint hardening, making a device more difficult to compromise, also can have the side effect of making it less compatible. So before you exercise any of these options, it's always good to take a look at especially legacy line of business applications that you have in your environment that may have not been upgraded to account for some of these older protocols like SMBv1 or like weak TLS. So certainly wouldn't recommend enabling these blanketly. Always good to plan for that very carefully. With that being said, we are at about 15 minutes left in terms of time. I'm going to stop my share and we're going to go ahead and take some of your questions. Again, please use the Q&A section to submit your questions. Much easier for us to keep track inside the Q&A section versus the chat. Let's see here. Michael has a question. Can you add group tags to the install? Cameron, would you be able to speak a little bit about how groups work inside of CrowdStrike and where the integration plays into that?
Yeah, so you can definitely use like sensor taggings on installs. So you've already kind of illustrated it. When you actually apply machines to policies, you're actually applying groups to policies. So it's not like you directly take, Steve's machine or Sarah's machine and put it in. You actually put Steve and Sarah's machine into a specific group, which then goes to a policy. You can then use a sensor tag on install, just a installation parameter, which would be basically a command line argument. That would basically be like, I don't know, company workloads or company workstations. And then that sensor tag can then be dynamically used to create a group and then automatically put in the policy. So yes, you can use sensor tags on install.
Excellent. Thank you for that. We have a question from a different Michael here, and his question is, will enabling CrowdStrike and NinjaOne change any settings on the CrowdStrike side, or is it view only? They have 2,000 plus endpoints, don't want to change anything on the CrowdStrike side once they enable that Ninja integration. And I think this, other than the tags, I would assume there's not going to be any modifications from the NinjaOne side.
Yeah, no, generally, I mean, I'm not privy to the holistic details on the NinjaOne integration, but there's generally going to be nothing modified on that. You're probably worried about your prevention policies, your settings, things such as your sensor update policies, user permissions. Those are going to be static. You're not going to have to worry about that. We actually also talked about how Ninja has a great feature which doesn't allow you to even install if there's conflicting AV solution. Feel free, if you're confident in your policies, CrowdStrike gives you a default policy by which is a dormant policy, which is neither detecting nor preventing. And then, of course, we have our phase 1 through 3, but you can technically deploy CrowdStrike out with a conflicting solution so long as you know that your default is going to fall into that dormant policy. And you can even have it run in a read-only mode with another AV. It's only when you move CrowdStrike into prevention-based functionality, that's when you need to truly disable and remove conflicting solutions. But suffice to say, if you enable the Ninja integration, the only thing Ninja does is on install, it'll actually set some sensor tags, which you'll see on the groupings, but it won't affect your prevention policies.
Thank you very much for that. Hopefully, peace of mind for anybody out there looking to turn on that integration. A question from Scott here, and I'll go ahead and take this one since it's more Ninja related. Scott is asking about transitioning from a different EDR AV tool. He wants to know, how does it work if that integration is already enabled and we would like to replace it with the CrowdStrike integration? And that's not an issue at all. So you would go ahead and set up the CrowdStrike integration in the App Exchange like we saw when I first started the demonstration. And that alone is not going to have any impact because no change is actually implemented on the Ninja side until you go into the policy and change the drop-down menu. So in your particular case, you would probably want to go ahead and switch gradually off of your pre-existing tool when you're moving into something like CrowdStrike. And so we would set up the app inside of the App Exchange, and then we would go into our individual policies and make that change from the older tool into CrowdStrike. Of course, in that event, you would want to make sure that you're following the recommended practice in that other tool to deactivate the license on their other tool prior to making that change in CrowdStrike, in Ninja to deploy CrowdStrike. Question from Brian. How does Ninja work on remote devices versus in-house? And I would say that to us, every device is a remote device because we are in the cloud. We're hosted in the AWS cloud. So there is no on-prem instance of Ninja. So as long as the device has an internet connection and the required URLs and IP addresses that we need to work are not being blocked, the device can be managed from practically anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection. No VPN, no additional infrastructure required. Just need to have the whitelisted URLs and IPs in order to make sure that Ninja can work. Let me look. I think Christopher Serpico has been in the chat answering questions, and he's been very good at it. So I'm actually going to go ahead and look at some other questions and try to share those with everybody else, just in case there's some value here. Let's see here. We had a question. Does CrowdStrike run alongside another service? This comes from Dan. And he specifically called out a particular AV, but I think that this is an answer that would apply across many AVs. And Kyle from CrowdStrike did answer his question. In that event, it would run in detect only mode, but because CrowdStrike runs at the kernel level, we suggest to run CrowdStrike alone on prevent mode as the sole endpoint protection platform. So keep that in mind. We saw that you certainly can deploy multiple AVs and EDR tools to a device, but we want to follow the recommended practice of the vendors. And in this case, it sounds like having that out of read-only mode would not be something that we would recommend.
And this is a general agnostic advice for anytime you have a kernel level application. If you can have two kernel level apps, which are both attempting to potentially block a certain process, you can get a feedback loop and then you can potentially blue screen. So you always want to be careful when you're using ring zero applications that are both trying to block the same base functionality. That's agnostic, right? Do not run two prevention-based solutions at the same time. But of course, feel free to push CrowdStrike out in that dormant mode, have it run alongside. You can even do the read only, right? It's just when you put it in prevention. I also saw some questions in the chat associated with disabling the defender. People may be using legacy-based products and whatnot. If you turn on the quarantine-based functionality within CrowdStrike, the Falcon sensor automatically registers with the Windows Security Center and disables Defender for you on your behalf. So you're in luck if you're leveraging Defender. Just turn on that quarantine. You have nothing else to do.
Thank you very much for that, Cameron. And kind of on a similar note here, I did spot a question in the chat that was asking about switching again from another integrated service over to CrowdStrike. I would say overall that process is going to be very easy. Integrate CrowdStrike, disable through your pre-existing AV, and then switch over the policy section inside of Ninja over to CrowdStrike to easily deploy. I think that's going to be a very seamless process with the integration. Going back to the Q&A section, a couple good ones. Here we had a question from Seth. they're an existing CrowdStrike and NinjaOne customer. Will they be able to maintain the direct relationship with CrowdStrike and use the Ninja integration, or does it require purchase? The integration does support a BYOL model. So if you are already a CrowdStrike customer and want to integrate, please do so. You are able to do that freely and easily. And then a question from John there: does CrowdStrike have a 24/7 SOC? And then CrowdStrike does. I thought maybe Cameron, you might want to speak a little bit more extensively on that.
Yeah, no, great opportunity to talk about that. So our SOC option is called Falcon Overwatch. And what Overwatch is they are that 24/7 SOC by which is threat hunting into that environment. They're looking for net new intrusions, zero-day attacks primarily, of course, and maybe even advanced persistent threat actors. And the moment that they find something, they're actually going to surface to you in real time and tell you, hey, this is exactly what we found. These are the machines compromised, and here's some information on what you may want to do next. And you have that line of communication open with that Overwatch team. A lot of companies use this to allow them to de facto emancipate themselves from the UI because they now know that Overwatch is going to be threat hunting for actual intrusions as well as zero-day patterns. Something we didn't really talk about was the fact that we have our integrated intelligence. CrowdStrike actually has the concept of communal immunity baked into it. And when you choose to go with CrowdStrike, you're actually getting that benefit of hundreds of millions of endpoints in real time. So when you get a push notification to your phone and it says, hey, there was a new ransomware that hit an oil pipeline, guess what? You don't need to worry about writing out those patterns because CrowdStrike already saw that and likely pushed out those updates in real time. And further layering on, Overwatch gives you the confidence that someone has threat hunted through your environment and they've confirmed, or will it have escalated something to you if there was an issue? That's known as Overwatch. There's a second and final layer, which is known as Falcon Complete. These are two independent motions. With Overwatch, when they give you that info, you're still responsible for performing remediation-based capabilities. With Complete, it's full white glove service, and we do that for you. So that's kind of how you layer it on. Core CrowdStrike package, Overwatch, which is the 24/7 SOC team, and then Complete is where we perform that remediation action and we take holistic ownership for you.
Now that's a great insight. Thank you, Cameron. I did see a couple questions in here from people asking about if they don't see the integration actually within NinjaOne, please reach out to your account manager. Everyone should have access to this, and if you're not seeing it, something has gone wrong. So please reach out to your account manager, and we can absolutely get that integration enabled for your account so that you see the exact same thing that I was showing earlier in the demo. If we're thinking about switching to CrowdStrike, is there a trial period available? I would certainly recommend reaching out to your account manager or sales rep on that question, but I do believe that there is a trial period.
And something else to mention on CrowdStrike, now that you brought that up, Jeff, is remember, it's that single agent. So if you want to spin up and do everything plus the kitchen sink, have at it. And maybe after that period, you decide that you want to go minimally viable package or vice versa. You went minimally viable and you like to ramp up. Once you get that agent on, you can expand or contract as needed to meet the demands. So that's really designed to be elastic and accommodate growth, really.
I think we're nearing the end here, so I'm actually going to go ahead and bring out Andrew, who has something to announce here.
Wow. Hello, everyone. Lots of people today. Thank you all for taking the time to join our webinar. I'm Andrew, and I'm a marketing programs coordinator for NinjaOne. I'm here to announce the prize winner of today's webinar. The winner will be able to choose between a Yeti Hopper Flip 12, a Nintendo Switch OLED, Apple Watch Series 9, or a Bose noise-canceling headphones. And the winner is, drumroll please, Yi Zhang. Everyone, please drop a huge congratulations in the chat. Yi, please keep an eye out in the following days for an email to claim your prize. But yeah, back to you, Jeff and Cameron.
Thank you very much. And I am seeing a question here that I'll admit I am going to have to rely on Cameron for. But this is a question from Jeremy. There's questions from MSPs regarding the CS CID and how that gets passed to the agent so that it lands in the correct tenant. I'm not familiar with that with Cameron, so I will have to lean on you for that.
Yeah, so the agent is an agnostic installer. When we speak about the Windows agent, and of course the Linux and the Mac agent, these are agnostic. That's the single agent by which every user for those architectures is going to be deploying. The parameter by which tells it where its true north is, sets the magnetic north is the CID value. And that's unique to your individual environment. You're going to get that on the sensor download page. So we want to make sure you get that CID, because without that CID, you're not able to actually pass, oh, hey, Steve's machine belongs to Steve's Pizza, so on and so forth. So the CID value, it's found within the UI under the sensor download page. From the Ninja integration standpoint, you're going to need to make sure that you accommodate a command line argument, which the argument is going to be CID equals, and then put your SID value there. Something else you can do is, if you're not comfortable putting the SID value there, assuming it gets compromised, which it shouldn't, keep that value secure, is you can even use installation tokens as an additional layer by which you then install with the CID value and the temporary install token, which can then be purged, and then layer on a new one, which then of course means even if you have the SID, you would then have to have a unique install value. But yes, the CID will be found in the UI. It's passed on install, has to be. And if you don't do that correctly, you won't be able to associate that individual endpoint to your environment, because everything's cloud-based.
Thank you for that. And then I think maybe one or two more questions that we have here. A question from Lorne. How often does the CrowdStrike agent check in with the console for policy updates?
It should be in theory real time, right? You want to make sure that, because we are a kernel, rather a on cloud solution, we want to be checking in real time with that heartbeat. So when you make those policy changes, it's going to be checking in with the cloud. Is going to say, hey, what policy am I in? And the cloud's going to say, looks like you're in policy A, but you need to be in policy B. So give it about 10, 15 minutes. It could be more, it could be less, but it should be checking in real time. We want to have a constant communication stream with that cloud. And once that policy checks on in and it tells it to receive a new one, it's going to push down.
Thank you again. And I think we will end on a Ninja related question. This is from Anthony. Good morning. How can we block browsing files so that technicians cannot access them without the device owner's permission? Two things that I would recommend there. One is that you can turn off the remote file browser for specific technicians so that they don't have the ability to silently upload, download, or delete files. And then secondarily to that, I would say that you can also control access to whether they can use Ninja Remote or not. Of course, Ninja Remote also has its own file transfer component as well. So just wanted to quickly answer that question. Thank you everyone for attending today. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. My email is jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. Happy to keep the conversation going if you have more questions. Of course, if you are an existing Ninja customer, please feel free to reach out to your account manager as well. Thank you very much to Cameron for being here today. I certainly learned a lot about CrowdStrike. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. And thanks, Jeff, for the demo. I learned a lot about Ninja too, so feeling is mutual.
And thank you to Kyle from CrowdStrike and Christopher Serpico from NinjaOne for answering questions in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a very good rest of your day, and take care.